Hey there, welcome to Technically Unraveled. I am your host for today, continuing the security and risk conversation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I am Brittan Benton, your global go-to-market director for Microsoft Modern Workplace and Microsoft Security here at Pax8. When I found out from Matt Batterby that Kristen Fehrenbach wigs were not reimbursable, I decided that today would be you, me, the cloud, and our special guest. And I'm sure that that will be enough for you today with everything that we have to cover. Kristen is in the actual clouds right now, coming back from this week's partner event in Denver. I promise to keep the Kristen vibes alive by confirming that I have in fact had a pumpkin spice cold brew today, and I'll share with you a fun fact. I am a breathwork facilitator and behavioral health coach. So not only do I support people into building security into their businesses, I also help people build more security within. And on that note, let's take a deep breath and roll on to the updates. All right, be warned, with the updates, I'm about to fill up your calendar for the rest of the year. But it's some events that you're going to want to make sure you don't miss, so I think you'll get going with them quick. The first one is a little retrospective. On October 9th, which was this week, Microsoft officially transitioned away from DAP admin relationships, meaning that only GDAP relationships should be used going forward as the standard. Of course, we have tools in the Pax8 marketplace that can help you with this, and you can reach out to your CAMs or your XSEs with any questions about making these changes. But now we'll move looking forward to the future. November 6th is our next Microsoft monthly update here at Pax8. And of course, if you can't make those live, we do post the replays here on YouTube. After that, in November, we have Microsoft Ignite coming to you virtually on November 15th and November 16th. And there, we'll be covering all of the AI and security newness that you would want to know from Microsoft. So get your dates in now on your calendar and meet all those sessions that you want by putting them into your backpack right there on the session login screen, and you won't miss anything coming up that you need to know about from Microsoft. Last but not least, there are 2 partner enablement sessions coming from Pax8 in December that you won't want to miss. On December 7th, there is a Microsoft 365 Copilot partner enablement session. And on December 13th, there is an Intra session. So that will mean that you're diving all the way into identity and access management with Microsoft Intra. Now that we've got the updates wrapped up, it's time to introduce our special guest. Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing good, Brittan. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I know you are no stranger to the audience, but can you give a quick introduction of yourself and a fun fact, because I know you well enough to know that you have a lot of them.
Oh, I do have a lot of fun facts. So yeah, I'm David Powell. I'm the Vice President of Service Strategy. And quite frankly, that title really doesn't mean a whole lot. My job ultimately is to help our partner community with their cybersecurity go-to-market. So I have a background with big MSPs, cybersecurity software. So that's what I'm here to do, is to help our partners build out their cybersecurity go-to-market. And the fun fact about me, we've covered several different ones, like the fact that I'm married to the girl I dated in high school and stuff. But what I will say is that I have this uncanny ability to know all lyrics of late 80s, early 90s rap songs. So like if you put a gun to my head and said, David, I'm going to shoot you, if you can't say all the lyrics to It's Tricky by Run DMC, I feel certain that I would live. Because I could definitely do all those lyrics. So that is my fun fact, is that I have my brain filled with useless late 80s, early 90s rap lyrics at the ready.
Note to self, always ask David for the fun fact. You do not disappoint. I so very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So you just wrapped up an event this week as well, but I was lucky enough to get to spend some time with you last month at Pax8 Protect, which was an event that you had put together to help support partners on the conversation around risk. Is that correct?
It is. And, Brittan, what we found is that a lot of our partners are very, very comfortable talking about technology. They've served their customers a long time, and they've really helped them through lots of different transitions. At one point, their stuff was on premises, and then it was obviously in Microsoft's cloud, and then they had everything in kind of standardized office locations. And in March of 2020, everyone went home, and suddenly they have these distributed networks they have to manage. So they've been very competent and capable at helping their customers make these big transformations, but they don't have that comfort level of talking about risk. And so what's happened really is these guys have neglected to have these conversations with a lot of their partners, their end users, because they don't know how to have that risk-based conversation. They feel more comfortable with technology. And so what we really wanted to help them do is give them a prescriptive programmatic approach to have those types of effective conversations with their end users about risk and not about technology, and how much risk is acceptable and how much are they willing to spend to mitigate that risk.
It's such a necessary topic, and I know you got some great buzz from CRN. There was an article about it afterwards, and getting to
Yeah.
hear the partners continue to buzz about it. They just got an incredible amount of value from exactly what you're outlining, just that ability to be supported and guided in the conversation. And I know that there's no real way to capture all of that today, but we can try.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask ask a question that comes up a lot and see what you might think about it, because I feel like I heard your perspective and it falls so in line with what the Microsoft perspective is around it. And it's really that, is this larger cybersecurity conversation relevant for that small to medium business customer, or what our partners might call the SMB segment?
Yes, it is. So those customers, the SMB is greatly at risk, but they just don't really understand it, right? And so what happens, unfortunately, is the breaches and security incidents that make the news are the big ones. Target years ago, and if you're a large bank or you're a large airline, all those make the news. And so what happens is there's this false sense of security that comes from being small. And it's really just a complete and total misperception, where the data is very, very clear that the SMB is at risk. And what happens around that, Brittan, is like, if you and I live next door to each other in a neighborhood and there was a break-in, there's no stigma related to your house being broken in, right? In fact, I'd be like, oh, Brittan, that's horrible. How can I help you? And the whole community would kind of rally around, and Facebook posts would be about how we can be extra vigilant and all this kind of stuff. So what happens then is that messaging, the idea that there are break-ins, would change our approach and our heightened sense of awareness of that. But in the SMB space, no one talks about it. There's still this stigma related to having a security incident. So no one talks about it. So what happens then is the SMB thinks that it's not happening to them, when really, going back to the housing analogy, they're living in a place where every single one of their neighbors has had their house broken into, but they think they're safe, right? So they think they live in the left and they really live on the right. And so it's just a tremendous misperception that they have around what their risk actually is. And so what we teach in the Pax8 Protect program is this idea that the first thing you do is, we talk about teach, tailor, and take control. But the first thing is this: teach. You have to help them understand what their actual risk is. So you have to illustrate to them that your risk is great, your risk is significant, your risk to your business is very real and happening to everyone your size. But that's that teaching part that our partners have to have with their end users to help them understand that, because right now they are motivated by their misperception of their risk.
Yes, you said something about it's not being talked about, and I completely see that reflected from partners and their customers, where it's not that you're too small to be at risk, but you just may be too small to end up on the evening news, and
That's
that's
exactly right.
a big place
That's
where things
exactly
can.
right. And to piggyback on that real quick too, is like, you also don't want to be on a Facebook page, where if you have to send out breach notifications, and then in your local community, all of a sudden there is this Facebook page talking about how you sent out a bunch of breach notifications. That's bad. So I think people don't want to be on the national news. They realize that their size, they won't be in the national news, but that doesn't mean that you can't have your unfortunate event become very public in your community. And I think the reputational risk is one that is often unconsidered. People just think about, can I afford this ransom? Do I have that kind of thing, versus the reputational risk of sending out a breach notification letter to all of your customers.
Yes, that's an incredible thing to point out. I feel like a lot of the times we speak about the fact that they may not recover financially from something once they've been hit as far as a small to medium business, but the reputation too. I mean, that's a lot of the times, or most of the time in small to medium business, really what carries your business is the community
Correct.
view and the way that they support you. So I think that's a wonderful thing to
Correct.
point out. So you actually mentioned something in the event that I really liked that goes along with this, and it was highlighting that MSP's journey by comparing it to the larger hero's journey. And I
Oh
think you
yeah.
had some really great insights around how that really can work in a supportive way with their end customer. And I'd love to hear you share a little bit of that because I think it ties in so well with what we're saying about educating and teaching the customers their risk as the first step.
Yeah, and Brittan, I mean, that's one of my favorite topics is, it's this idea of like who is the hero? And I've been on the vendor side, so I've been selling to MSPs before, and I think way too often the vendors come in and they're like, "We are here to save the day. We are the hero." Right? And there's this philosopher named Joseph Campbell, and he wrote this whole thing around what's called the hero's journey. And basically, it's this idea there's this regular person who doesn't realize they have special skills. They meet a guide, and then the guide takes them and shows them unlocks their special capabilities, and they go and do something they didn't think that they could do before. And some of the highest grossing movie franchises of all time follow this script exactly. So let's just look at Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, right? Is you've got Luke Skywalker living on this desert place, right? And he doesn't know that he's a Jedi. Then Obi-Wan comes along and shows him the lightsaber. And, eventually in this whole, story arc, he goes and Yoda helps him and all this kind of stuff. At one point, when he kisses Leia and you find out later it's his sister, that's an awkward plot point. But anyway, so there's this whole kind of story arc where Obi-Wan is the guide, right? And Luke Skywalker is the hero. Similarly, in Lord of the Rings, you have Frodo living in the Shire. He's just a normal hobbit. Then Gandalf the wizard comes along and shows him the Ring of Power, and he goes and throws it in the fires of Mount Doom, the whole bit. And so ultimately, it is important to realize who is the hero and who is the guide. And what we want our partners really to understand is that the partner, the MSP, is the guide, not the hero. And their job is to help guide the hero, who is their client, to a place they would not have ended up on their own, right? Frodo is never going to end up in Mordor, throwing the ring in Mount Doom by himself. He needs Gandalf to help him on that journey. Similarly, Luke Skywalker is never going to get away from his aunt and uncle on the desert planet and then go and slay his father later without Obi-Wan, helping him on that journey. And so that's the role that I want our MSPs to just always have in their head is like, am I the hero or am I the guide? You are the guide. And the end user is the hero. And so you're there to help them unlock these heroic capabilities and get to a place they would not have gotten on their own. And when you keep that framework in mind and your messaging is guided by that, it always helps align towards what is best for the hero instead of what is best for me. I made a sale. Lots of people are like, "Ooh, I made a sale." Well, is that what was best for the customer or not? And so as long as you have that heroic mentality in proper priority, that the end user is the hero, you're the guide, then I think it really motivates the right type of initiatives with the end users.
I love the illustration because it is just so palpable, the way that you tell the
Yeah.
story, everyone can hear it. And it brings me to another point. So I absolutely agree with you on the risk for SMB and on the partnership as the guide. But I can immediately feel that next partner question because we know that this threat landscape, the cybersecurity landscape is constantly evolving. And so where are we leading them to, when it
Yeah.
comes to when we've got tools and all of these things. And I think that Pax8 Protect had an incredible, practical way to help the guides to do what they need to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, so the two parts of that. The first part is we teach, tailor, and take control, right? So the first is we have to teach the partners what their risk is so that they recognize that they're kind of in the bad part of town instead of the good part of town, so they understand what their actual risk is. Then we want to tailor our offering. Not everyone needs the same layers of security. So, Brittan, if you and I live next door to each other and you had priceless Picassos and I had furniture from my dorm room and the Blues Brothers poster on the wall, I just need a deadbolt lock on my house. You need the laser beams from the Tom Cruise movies, right, to protect your price list Picasso. So not everyone needs the same amount of security measures. It depends on the value of the asset you're trying to protect. So that's the tailor part, is like, how many things do you need? Then the take control is like, this is a reluctant spend for end users. No one is eager to spend money on cybersecurity, right? No one wants to do this. So it's this idea that you want to put your arm around them and say like, hey, Brittan, look, I know you don't want to do this, but this is important. And you guide her to this solution she would not have arrived at, herself. And so it's really kind of, I like to use this messaging as similar to like putting a roof on your house. No one wants to put a new roof on their house. No one wants to spend that money. No one has budget for that. But at some point, the roofer kind of has to put their arm around and say, hey, Brittan, you can't have leaky roof, and you have to spend the money. So we teach that part. And then, like you said, well, okay, great. Dave, you've taught them how to sell. What do we sell? And the messaging around that is really around cybersecurity insurance readiness. Is that cybersecurity insurance is becoming almost like required. So all companies have like general liability, they have errors and omissions, and now cybersecurity insurance is pretty much the thing that everyone's going to need to have. So I called up a bunch of cybersecurity insurance companies and talked to them, said, okay, what is the thing that everyone needs, right? So what mitigates your risk the most? So what is the equivalent in cybersecurity tools to like seatbelts and airbags? Every car has seatbelts and airbags. Some cars have like collision avoidance. They'll take over and help you avoid the crash, all that kind of stuff. But every car has seatbelts and airbags. So I asked them, what are the seatbelts and airbags in your cybersecurity tool stack? And they said there's 5 things, that they want to see 5 things. And the 5 things are advanced threat protection, which is really like a cocktail of a lot of different kind of things, multi-factor authentication, endpoint detection and response, security awareness training, and segregated backups. So as we go through those things right there, the advanced threat protection, again, it's the cocktail, multi-factor. Microsoft will tell you that only 30% of people have MFA enabled. Now, Microsoft is making steps to enable that on their stuff, rightly so. But then what about all the other stuff that you use that doesn't have MFA enabled? Endpoint detection and response is pretty self-explanatory, where you have a whole bunch of endpoints now, iPhones, iPads, all this kind of stuff, and you want to protect all those endpoints. Security awareness training is how do you teach your user community the importance of cybersecurity. And then segregated backups is, quite frankly, the bad guys, the threat actors, have learned to ransom all your active data and ransom your backups. So what the best practice now is like, how many copies of our backups can we have as many different places to protect that from ransomware? So if you have these 5 things, the sales motion kind of goes like this a little bit. Like, it's like, hey, Brittan, if you've got cybersecurity insurance, you want to keep your premiums low, then you need these 5 things to keep your premiums low. Or, hey, Brittan, if you don't have cybersecurity insurance and want to get it, but want to get the lowest premium possible, you need these 5 things so that you can mitigate your cybersecurity insurance risk. And so that's really the kind of the real practical piece that we've taught. And to your earlier point, man, it really has resonated with our partners, because we've given them the tools of how to sell, and then answer the question, what do we sell? Go sell this. And there's this really kind of nice sales tactic called the appeal to the authority of a third party, which is where you can go and say like, hey, Brittan, I'm not saying you got to buy this stuff. Insurance companies are saying that this has become the standard that you need to align to. And so it helps the MSP not be the bad guy. It's kind of like, hey, we're here to help you because this is what someone else is kind of saying that you have to do. And it's been really, really effective, and the partner response has been really tremendous.
Practical is exactly the thing that comes to mind for me too. Like, it's just such a practical way of going about it, because it is something that is going to only become more necessary to have as far as cybersecurity insurance goes. And then it being an absolute place that you want to begin that conversation is great. Being with the Microsoft team, of course, we also encourage some of this. Like you said, with a lot of the changes that come forward on the Microsoft side, we encourage our partners to strike while that iron is hot as well. Like, go ahead and have the conversation and lean on Microsoft as a good reason why. So I think that is just I love that third party part to it, because it really helps to guide the conversation.
Well, Brittan, real quick too, on the Microsoft point, is I know that there's some enhanced SKUs that Microsoft has, and I'm not a Microsoft expert. That's why we have folks like you and Kristen and others. But there is an enhanced SKU that has more security stuff around it. And MSPs have told me they struggle selling that SKU because they don't want to go back and upcharge all of the customers. So several of the partners have said this advanced threat protection and the 5 things is a place they can put that upcharge for the higher SKU. So now they can sell up into a better a Microsoft license that has more security built into it, but they don't have to go increase their prices of the base MSP services. They can put that in the cybersecurity bundle, and that gives them the headroom they need to change that licensing. So I think that's a really creative way to get the outcome you want without having to go back to your customer base and say, hey, by the way, we've got to increase everyone by X amount per end user.
Yeah, without them having to get back into like a tools and tech conversation and keeping it
Correct.
around what's truly best for the
Correct.
customer. Yes, I
Yeah,
love
you can.
that too.
I
We
hate to use the
won't
word
get out of this
hide, but you
episode
can
without me
bury it over
mentioning
there. Yeah.
something, please.
Yeah.
It'll just be a little bit later.
Yeah.
But one thing, so when we talk about this being like the right time to have this conversation, and we want to look at what we can do to prepare for the future, I want to ask, because of course this is also what we decided to name this episode when we dig in, and it's really, what do we think the future state of cyber threat and cybersecurity will be? Do we see any signs of these threats slowing down or improving, or is it the opposite?
I would love to give you good news here, Brittan, but I can't. So ultimately, the bad guys are really creative, right? And so what we've seen in the past few years, just in general, just using the housing analogy again, is they used to come in the front door. So now we've put a Ring camera on and deadbolt locks on the front door. Then they started coming in the windows. So we've run around the windows and we put locks on the windows. Then they're coming in the chimney like Santa Claus or something, right? And so these bad guys keep finding new ways. And if we if we cover up the chimney, they'll get in the crawl space and drill a hole in the floor and come up from underneath or something. So they're just very creative at how they get in. So there will never be a point where we're done. It is a continually evolving landscape around cybersecurity threats. But the kind of bad news / good news in here is that most of the data shows in the past maybe year or so that there have been a decrease a little bit in some of the threat actors. So we would say, okay, is that better tooling on our part? Is that better cybersecurity controls? It could be. But what a lot of the cybersecurity experts really feel is the war in Ukraine is drawing a lot of that attention. So a lot of these threat actors are in Ukraine and in Russia. And in the past, year and a half or 2 years since the conflict started, they've turned their cybersecurity offensive efforts against one another. So you've got the Russians trying to hack into Starlink because the Ukrainians are using Starlink to empower their drones, and then the Ukrainians are trying to shut down some of the communication grid over on the Russian side. So you've got all this back and forth. So they've turned their efforts against one another. And the scary part is that whenever that conflict resolves itself, that the Ukrainian threat actors and the Russian threat actors are going to turn their energies back towards, we got to go get some money now. And so they're going to turn their energies back into the market. So if we're seeing a little lull, what's probably going to come is when that conflict resolves itself, is going to be a really noisy period to where all that effort comes back towards monetization. So how can they build up their pocketbooks again? Sorry, that's not good news. It's not fun.
What a thing to point out. But yeah. It's a valuable point to make. And I think that really just reinforces that the time is now. Go have these conversations now. And lean on Pax8 to help you. So now comes the conversation around the way that the Microsoft and Pax8 team can support you in that. So I'd love to share with you our premium professional services offer. This was created with CIS controls. And what I love about that is it gives the ability to proactively get in front of your customers with a framework as to what it is that you are bringing forward towards them. It's measurable, it's repeatable, and it takes bandwidth off your teams and passes it right on to our Pax8 ProServices teams. So it really helps to allow you to move faster with your deployments and to really be a thought leader in that security space by proactively allowing these settings to get your environment to that zero trust capability. So I love to be able to do that, and it works with all of the unified security SKUs. So that is Microsoft 365 Business Premium, Microsoft 365 E3, and Microsoft 365 E5. If you're lucky enough to be a North American partner, there is some first come, first serve funding on that configuration as well. So there's a possibility to even get that for free, depending on the customers that you're bringing over into those solutions. So David, hey, Brittan, I want to say thank you.
Is free good, Brittan? Is free good? Free sounds good to me.
Free is very good, and free good. Security support is even better.
Yeah. I've always felt free was good. Like in college, when I go home with a friend and their parents would be like, "Hey, this is what we're having for dinner tonight. Is that okay?" And I would say, "Are you going to charge me for it?" And they're like, "Well, no." I'm like, "Then yes, that's wonderful because
If it's free
FREE equals
99, you're there.
GOOD." Yeah, free is good. Always, always. So that sounds like a pretty good offer you had out there. That's good.
We're so excited to offer it just to help our partners, get a leg ahead, because we definitely understand how much that they want to keep security top of mind. And of course, Pax8 wants to support them in doing that.
Yeah.
So, David, I want to thank you so much for the time that you brought to the episode. I cannot wait to see you again, because I feel like we could talk about this for hours. So we know that you will be back.
I will.
And
now,
Kristen,
Brittan, I mean, I guess the no. Wait a minute. Does Kristen have to come back, or can you and I just take over this show? I mean, does she really have to come back? I mean, she's on a plane. She can't make any decisions right now. I feel like we can go on and decide right now that this will just be the Dave and Brittan show from here on out. I feel like that'd be good. I don't think
Kristen, you have next Thursday off and every Thursday.
Yeah,
after
we'll just
that.
let her know when she lands that we made some changes.
Yeah, that'll be a surprise in the inbox. But I think that hey, after how much time she's spent on this side of the host chair, she might welcome it for a little bit, right?
Well, yeah. Be careful what you ask for, right? Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. I thank you so much for being here. It's been a blast, and it always is. So I'm sure that we will see you again soon. And Kristen will be back next week, because she'll be continuing the security conversation with Microsoft security expert Kat Daniels, who also joined David and I at Pax8 Protect last month. So it's like you're getting a little behind the scenes if you weren't able to make it to that great event, and you can keep your eyes out for it in the future so that you can get there in person and learn from all these incredible experts like our guest today, David Powell. Thanks again, and we will see you next Thursday at 2 Mountain Time, and every Thursday after that. Have a great afternoon.